6 ancient skeletons were tested with a new method. 4 of them worked. Every attempt like it, on bones like these, had failed before this one. What came out of those 4 skeletons was something nobody had predicted. It overturned generations of arguing over exactly where an entire people came from. This is the story of the Igbo, and it's older, stranger, and more layered than anyone expected. That breakthrough happened at a place called Shum Laka, in the grass fields of northwest Cameroon, right near the border with southeast Nigeria. A team from Belgium and Cameroon dug there in the 1980s and 90s. They found 18 skeletons in total. Some were buried 8,000 years ago, others were buried 3,000 years ago. Before this dig, every real attempt to pull ancient DNA from this part of Africa had failed. A team of researchers from Harvard, St. Louis University, and the University of Montreal finally found a way in. The petrous bone. That's the dense bone around your inner ear, and it protects DNA better than almost any other bone in the body. It's how those 4 skeletons, all children, gave up real whole genomes. A genome is just the full genetic blueprint of a person, everything that makes their body work. The results came out in the science journal Nature in January 2020, led by researcher Mark Lipson. One detail stood out right away. An 8,000-year-old boy carried something called Y chromosome haplogroup A00. That's just a name for a father-to-son genetic line, passed down from dad to son to grandson, and this one is the oldest ever found. It split off from every other male line on Earth over 200,000 years ago. It was a clue that something much older and much stranger was hiding underneath everything historians thought they knew. Before this discovery, 2 big theories fought over where the Igbo came from. Each one carried real weight. The first is called the indigenous deep roots theory. Historians like Adela Figbo, backed by archaeologist Thurston Shaw, built this one. It says the Igbo grew up right where they live now, near where the Niger and Benue rivers meet. No outside population needed. Just thousands of years of local growth. Language experts back this up too. Igbo belongs to a big family of African languages called Niger-Congo, in a branch called Volta-Niger. Language patterns suggest it split off from related languages somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 years ago. The second is called the external migration theory, or sometimes the lost tribes theory. It claims the Igbo came from far away, from the Near East, maybe even ancient Israel. People who believe this point to shared customs, circumcision on the 8th day, certain cleansing rituals, farming calendars, and titled kings. It's a theory with deep meaning for many people, but it never had strong proof from digs or DNA. This matters beyond old history books. The deep roots theory backs up claims to land and political power in southeast Nigeria today. The lost tribes theory has shaped religious identity for some groups, and it sometimes gets tied into talk about Biafra and independence. These arguments are about who belongs and who gets to speak for the land. So which theory does the DNA actually support? The twist: neither one, not exactly. The lost tribes theory falls apart completely once you look at the genes. We'll get to why. But even the deep roots theory, told the simple way, is too simple. It pictures one steady population sitting in one place for thousands of years. What the DNA actually shows is a population built in layers, replacement, blending, and one genetic ingredient nobody saw coming at all. The real answer is older, stranger, and far more layered than either side ever argued. If stories like this, the ones hiding quietly inside our own DNA, are the reason you're here, go ahead and hit subscribe now. We dig up one of these every single week. To understand how those layers formed, start with the map. Geography did most of the work here. Look at the borders first. Up north, the open Sudanian savanna corridor connects West Africa to everywhere else. It's easy to cross, easy for people, animals, and trade to move through. Down south, the Bight of Biafra coastline marks where the land simply stops and the ocean begins. Everything interesting happens in between. and almost all of it has to pass through one place first, the spot where the Niger and Benue rivers meet. That river meeting point is the one narrow gateway that every major population movement in this story had to pass through. A water highway carrying trade, farming ideas, and people south, out of the dry savanna and into the wet forest. South of that river meeting point, the land splits again. The West African rainforest is thick, hot, and wet, nothing like the open land above it. A tiny fly made a huge difference here, the tsetse fly, which spreads a disease deadly to cattle and horses. Because of that fly, herding groups and horse-riding armies from the north could almost never push through the forest. So the savanna stayed a busy two-way road. But the forest zone below the river meeting point became something closer to a sealed room. That structure, funnel in through the rivers, then seal shut at the forest's edge, explains why the Igbo homeland's genetic story looks so different from northern Nigeria's, and it set the stage for every layer still to come. The oldest layer goes back more than 200,000 years. It belongs to a deep founding branch of the African family tree. Scientists call it the basal West Central African hunter-gatherer line. Basal just means it sits at the very root. It's the oldest point on the tree. This is the same line carried by that 8,000-year-old boy from Shum Laka, the one with the ancient AOO genetic line. The Shum Laka children carried something surprising. About 2/3 of their DNA traced back to a totally unknown, very deep West African group. The other third connected them to a different group. That group is the Central African rainforest hunter-gatherers. Today, their closest living relatives are the Aka and Baka peoples. They still live in Central Africa's forests. There's no real competing story here. The ancient DNA is too clear for one. And you can still see living proof of this old branch today. The Aka and Baka let scientists study a hunter-gatherer way of life directly, a way of life that existed long before farming ever reached the region. But that world was not going to stay untouched. A new way of living was already forming to the north. It was forming right at that river meeting point. And it was about to change everything. Somewhere between 5,000 and 3,000 years ago, people near the river meeting point started growing two crops. Those crops would shape the whole region, the white Guinea yam and the oil palm. Growing yams meant clearing forest and settling down in one place. Settling down meant the population could grow fast. Scientists call this the Niger-Congo agricultural expansion. That's just a name for this big farming spread. Its genetic mark is huge. It's the reason one father-to-son genetic line, called E-M2, now shows up in 80 to 90% of Igbo men today. One branch of these farming groups, the Bantu-speaking peoples, spread out across the whole continent. They reached Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa. But the Proto-Igbo branch didn't move that way. Proto-Igbo just means the direct ancestors of today's Igbo. They stayed put in the Niger River basin. They built a large, stable farming community instead. And there's no rival story here either. The genes and the digs agree. This was one single expansion, spreading out from the same farming core near the rivers. This population also built things that still stop archaeologists in their tracks today. There's a site called Igbo Ukwu in what is now Anambra State, Nigeria. British archaeologist Thurston Shaw dug there between 1959 and 1964. He published his full report in 1970. It's called Igbo Ukwu, an account of archaeological discoveries. His team found hundreds of detailed bronze castings. They were made with an extremely hard casting method called lost wax. They also found more than 165,000 glass beads, testing places all of this at around the 9th century. That's hundreds of years before any European ever set foot in the region. This site connects to the Enri Kingdom. That's a religious and political power that held huge influence across Igbo land, starting around the 10th century. They held that power without an army. They used shared belief, ritual, and trade to hold a whole civilization together instead. But something was still missing from the picture at this point in the story. Every model of West African ancestry up to this stage assumed the story was basically finished. Deep hunter-gatherers, then farmers. Done. Nobody had found any trace yet of a much older, much stranger genetic ingredient. It was hiding inside the modern genome. Nobody had looked for it in the right way. All of that was about to change. In 2020, two scientists at UCLA ran a brand new kind of DNA analysis. Their names were Arun Durvasula and Sriram Sankararaman. They looked at whole genomes from people living in West Africa today, including groups in Nigeria, and they found something nobody expected. On average, about 8% of West African DNA comes from an unknown extinct human relative. In some people, it's as high as 19%. Scientists call it a ghost population. Nobody has ever found a bone or skeleton belonging to it. All scientists have is its fingerprint, still sitting inside living people today. This ghost line split off from the ancestors of modern humans a very long time ago. That split happened somewhere between 360,000 and just over 1 million years back. The actual mixing, the interbreeding itself, happened much more recently. It happened sometime in the last 124,000 years. If that sounds strange, it's not new to science. Europeans carry DNA from Neanderthals. People across Melanesia carry DNA from another ancient relative called Denisovans. What makes the West African case different is this: that ghost line has never been matched to a single bone anywhere. Scientists can only see it through its genetic shadow, the mark it left behind in modern DNA. This kind of signal has a name too. Scientists call it archaic ghost introgression. That just means DNA from an extinct group blended into a living population's gene pool without leaving any other trace. The West African case is now one of the clearest examples of it found anywhere on Earth. Some of this ancient DNA sits inside genes that do real jobs in the body, and scientists have already named a few of them. Take the first one, called NF1. It helps control cell growth. Then there's a second one called KCNIP4. It helps nerve signals travel through the body. And a third one called TRPS1 is tied to how bones and cartilage form. In some groups, these ancient DNA segments show up in over half of all people. This shows a link between the ancient mixing and how these genes work today, though it's not solid proof of exactly what happened back then. But it strongly suggests this mixing mattered. It left a real, working mark. One more twist worth knowing. Around this same window of time, the Sahara Desert was drying out. That period is called the Green Sahara. Herding groups carrying North African and Nilo-Saharan DNA moved south into the Sahel. That wave reshaped groups like the Hausa and Fulani in northern Nigeria. But it barely touched the Igbo homeland at all. The rainforest boundary held strong. So even while one migration wave reshaped the north, the forest zone stayed locked into its older, deeper layers. Something genuinely strange happened here. This exact genetic pattern survived for thousands of years without blending away. The land itself did the work. That same rainforest wall and that same tsetse fly kept northern armies out. They kept new genes out too for an enormous stretch of time, roughly from the start of farming all the way to the era of the Atlantic slave trade. Historians like Afigbo and earlier researchers like Ford and Jones called this a defining feature of the region. In simple terms, it protected the population from the fast change that reshaped groups out on the open savanna. This pattern held most of the time, though trade and contact still crossed the forest boundary sometimes. Scientists can still read old genetic signals in this rainforest region today, signals that other regions erased long ago. Zoom out and you can see this whole story laid out on the map. It runs roughly north to south. Up north, groups like the Hausa carry clear signs of that later herding migration from the Sahara. Move south into the forest. Igbo and Yoruba populations form a tight group here. They are closely related to each other, but they are clearly set apart from their northern neighbors. Push even deeper into the forest. You find the Aka and Baka hunter-gatherer communities there. They are living markers of that oldest founding layer. There's a second, quieter thread too, easy to miss next to the bigger farming story. The old Central African rainforest hunter-gatherer connection coming in from the south and east. It's still there in the data, and this is the key point. None of these genetic patterns care about today's borders. They follow rivers, forests, and old trade paths instead of the lines drawn on a modern map. Back to our two camps. The indigenous deep roots theory said the Igbo grew up right where they are, near the river meeting point. No major outside population moved in. If that were true in its simplest form, you'd expect one clean, unbroken genetic line. A line running straight from the earliest people down to today. What you actually find is continuity of place, but not one single unbroken population. Deep hunter-gatherers were absorbed by incoming farmers, layer by layer. And a totally unidentified ancient population left its mark somewhere in the mix too. So yes, it's indigenous, but it's not simple. The external migration, or lost tribes theory, claimed a real meaningful population moved in from the Levant or ancient Israel. The DNA testing rejects this about as clearly as science ever does. Less than 1% of Igbo DNA traces to that region. There's almost none of the father-to-son genetic lines you'd expect from a Middle Eastern migration, lines like J1 or J2. And the mother-to-child DNL is almost entirely rooted in one deep African branch. Scientists call it macro-haplogroup L. The real outside genetic contribution to the Igbo genome came from somewhere else entirely. It came from an unknown ancient human relative, tens of thousands of years before written history. And it came from a rainforest hunter-gatherer line far older than any link to the Near East. One thing is worth sitting with: none of this makes Igbo identity any less real. A layered, mixed ancestry doesn't weaken a culture. It's simply how every human population on Earth actually formed. Put Igbo genes side by side with Yoruba and Hausa genes, and the real pattern is shared ingredients, just mixed in different amounts. The same deep hunter-gatherer base, the same farming wave, the same ghost genetic signal, blended in different ratios depending on where the rainforest let outsiders in and where it kept them out. The full picture, start to finish, looks like this. It begins over 200,000 years ago. A deep founding West Central African population starts the story. You can still see it faintly today, in groups like the Aka and Baka. On top of that, around 5,000 years ago, came the Niger-Congo farming wave. Yam and oil palm growers built strong, stable communities. They eventually created the detailed bronze work buried at Igbo Ukwu. Woven through all of it, invisible until 2020, is a ghost ancient human line. It mixed with early people in this region. It left a working mark in genes tied to growth, nerve signals, and bone development. And the rainforest held this whole structure together for thousands of years, keeping outside genes from blending in. This is simply what this region's land and its deep human history actually produced. It still shows up today, in real, physical ways. There's the sickle cell trait. There's the Duffy negative blood trait too. Both were shaped by generations of exposure to malaria. There's a gene called APOL1. It once protected against sleeping sickness. Now it raises the risk of kidney disease in modern life. And there are body changes built for a hot, wet climate. Those changes work differently with a modern salty diet. That same coastline we mapped earlier, the Bight of Biafra, had one more chapter written into it. Between 1650 and 1860, more than 1.2 million enslaved Africans were forced onto ships. Those ships left from ports like Bonny and Calabar. A large share of the people on them came from the Igbo homeland, just inland from that coast. That single departure point made Igbo ancestors one of the largest single groups in the African diaspora. You can find their mark in places like Virginia, Jamaica, and Barbados. It's still heard today in local dialects. It's still visible in stories and traditions carried across the ocean. And today, that broken thread is being reconnected. Millions of people across the Americas use DNA tests now. These tests trace direct genetic matches back to modern Igbo communities. A centuries-old break is turning into something people can actually follow, step by step, back to where it started. We should also be honest about what we don't know. The human remains at Igbo Ukwu dissolved in the region's acid soil, so there's still no ancient DNA directly from that site. Shum Laka, hundreds of miles away, remains the closest genetic match we have. Nobody has found a single bone from that ghost ancient human line. It exists only as a genetic shadow, and the exact timeline of when farmers replaced or absorbed the earlier hunter-gatherer groups is still being narrowed down, study by study. This same pattern keeps showing up all over the world. A population confidently tells one story about itself for centuries. Then, ancient genomes reveal something far more layered underneath. It's happened in Europe, in South Asia, in the Americas. What makes the West African case stand apart is that ghost line. Unlike Neanderthals or Denisovans, it has no bones, no cave, no name, just a signature, still sitting inside millions of people today. And that brings us back to where we started. 4 children, 6 bone samples, 1 breakthrough after decades of failure. That single discovery went far beyond filling a gap on a map. It proved that a story people had told one way for generations was actually built from layers nobody had fully seen before. Layers scientists are still reading today, one genome at a time. So, a question for you. If researchers could pull ancient DNA from just one more site anywhere in West Africa, where do you think they should dig next? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want the next hidden layer of history sent straight to you, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. We're not done digging.